Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Weipan. My name is Cal.
And I'm Sunny.
Today's episode is Stranger in a Strange Land, where we're going to be talking about what makes a good game store and how to get cheap hobby items.
Recently, we visited Singapore, and the thing we wanted to do most is check out the different types of hobby stores there are in Singapore. We didn't have a lot of time, but we only checked out about one. Previous trip, we actually checked out another one, so we're going to talk a little bit about our experience.
So with our most recent trip, we found this little game store, and it was a veritable Aladdin's cave, wasn't it?
It was fully stocked with limited editions, things that are no longer in production, things you didn't even know existed. Things from the 70s, the 80s, you name it, they have it.
Yeah, and basically with this place, right, they had so much of everything. Yet their store policies were so strange.
It is so weird that we are convinced that it's a money laundering scheme.
Well, maybe, but the point is that despite them having all of these things and me actually calling up people and going, hey, they have this, do you want it?
And within 30 minutes, you have like messages coming at you, say like, get it for me, I will give you the money for it.
And them actually sending the money in that period of time.
Best part was there were no pictures. We just said, they have X. And they were like, give it to me now.
Yeah.
Okay, you get it. This store is really great, but their policies is another question altogether.
One of the big problems was there's no photos allowed and you're not allowed to game there unless you're a member. Totally understandable, but also no sitting.
Yeah, like if you're just visiting the shop, you can't sit on the chair. And that was a bit much for me because we were all walking the whole day. Our feet are aching and I just wanted to take a seat at the place, and the shop assistant got very finicky after that, and I had to explain myself. And that wasn't
our first time. What you're talking about now, you're talking about like our third time going there, and we'd already dropped something like
$500 at the shop, and you know, he's just trying to keep to the rules to a T, and doesn't really want to bend it in any way, shape, or form.
So once we found out why they had the no photos policy, we were like, oh yeah, fair enough.
So staff, shop members, they just don't want them to be posted on social media and things like that. Privacy, obviously, but...
And that's fair enough, but here's the thing, right? We said to the guy, all right, well, you can have our phone or camera. I had an actual camera.
Yeah, because there was like a whole review about how some lady took out her phone just to check something and she was run out of the shop. And I was
that's
God.
What it said on the review. And we're like,
maybe it's the phone. What if it was a camera?
So I had an actual camera and I was like, dude, you can set up the product display, but I am contacting people and getting you sales. You can take the pictures. We won't touch our phones. We'll put them on the desk, whatever. Just let us show these to the people back home. And he's like, sorry, no, store policy.
Yeah, it's just, he couldn't really give us a proper answer for it at all.
Oh, and his mannerisms were quite strange. He
is literally an NPC from a game.
Yeah, he was like, hello, villager. Would you like to purchase wares from my store? Oh, yes. Very interesting story. Please continue. Would you like to buy wares from my store?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm having a go at him, but the problem was he followed us everywhere like we were going to steal something, even after we laid down all that money.
Yes, and we visited this shop 3 times at least. So if you were going to steal on your 3rd try...
And he was very dismissive of Sunny at the start, and he was dismissive of me at the start until I said I'm a commission painter, and then until I talked about using the Citadel paints with the screw tops, and he's like, oh.
He got a lot more interested into having a conversation after that and recommending a lot of products to us after we expressed that we were actually in the hobby. So I think he wouldn't have been as interactive if we were just laymen.
Perhaps the problem wasn't actually him. I think maybe he's decent, but when we compare him to our local guy, who is actually really nice, the guy who owns and runs the local place, and I don't want to name him or the store, not because I think that they're bad, because I think that they're good, and I don't know whether this will help or hinder them. Sonny, seeing that store, the previous store we saw in Singapore, and our local store, what do you think makes a good game store?
I think a good game store all boils down to how well you interact with your community and everyone that comes into the shop, whether they are hobbyists or not. So, trying to make an effort to learn their name, get to know their interests, their lifestyle, and then, maybe even try to introduce them into the hobby, show off some of the games that the players are into, and trying to get people to integrate into the hobby environment and not just dismissing everyone. And it's also about the way you run the shop, your policies of the shop. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking pictures as long as you're open about like, hey, it's about people, not about the product. And giving some leeway, not being so rigid with like every single thing. If not, that just ruins the freedom and flexibility someone can in having a safe space to be in a shop and to feel like, hey, this is someplace I can come to and relax and be happy and make friends. And also make friends with the shop owner. Get to know him, get to know his products, and use that for myself. And that grows support for the shop.
When I hear all those things, I think it's a very much ladies' answer. It's about community and about feelings and that sort of thing. But I think about the physical aspects of a store which makes it a good store. For example, lighting. Lighting is a big one. I talked about this with our store owner, and one of his key things was having good lighting, because without it, your place looks a bit like a dungeon.
That just makes you feel unsafe and unwelcomed.
The second physical point about the store is very difficult because floor space costs money and you don't want the place to be too cramped, and that's what I'm talking about. Have it feel like you can walk through the store.
And it's not just about having play space, about being able to utilize it as well. If you have too much focused on the actual hobby items, the shop portion of it, you just feel like a customer just going in and out to buy products, not to have a hobby. It doesn't become a hobby shop if you can't actually do any hobby things.
Yeah, and I think the point you bring up about play spaces, I've been in play spaces where they've set it up so that you don't really have that much space to move between the play spaces. Have that space to move, because if you don't, it feels like you're not someone there for enjoyment. You feel like you're on an aeroplane that you're jammed in like a sardine.
Most people don't even have a conducive environment to play. That's why they're coming to your shop in the first place. So if you're not giving them that space, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. I think that we've talked enough about shops and that. Let's move on to the next thing. What bridges this and the previous topic is mentality. When we take a look at that other store, which is jam-packed with great items, it doesn't really compare to a good hobby store just because of how they run it, rather than what they have.
Yes, and a lot of the times a hobby shop is like an airport. It's got lots of specialty items, but at the same time it's got everyday items that's being sold for exorbitant prices. But if we thought laterally, we might have known where to get those exact same items, but in a completely different space. Like, for example, a lot of your hobby shop items are actually everyday items. Like, for example, your $43 set of 3 dry brushes from Army Painter could actually be a 20 set of brushes from eBay for makeup brushes.
Yeah, actually, there is... The reason that she brings this up is because she didn't expect me to know anything about makeup at all, which I really don't. I do know just a very small amount, but the reason I know about it is because... Now, this is the thing that you're going to have to take note of. The Jessup 15 set Zinderful T284. Yes, I had that written down. The reason that you need to know that is because that set right there is like $20 and it has more dry brushes than you could ever need, and it's just a regular ass set of
makeup brushes.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking on the makeup brushes, that's a completely different field to the hobby shop, right? Like
Yeah.
men are the one playing hobbies. How did they go into a female area like makeup brushes? How did you get there? How did you think makeup brushes?
I think it had been going around for a while and I investigated and essentially found that. But there's also other things out there, like, if, for example, taking that same sort of field, there's nail art stuff where there's like those...
dotting tools and all that, yeah?
Well, not just that, the glittering sort of stuff that you can use on your fingernails could be used for models, you know, like... I don't know what it's called, like the prism sort of glosses.
You mean like the chrome sort of shifting color types?
Yeah, shifting colors, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I only know this because I watched a ton of nail art video growing up, but just because I had an interest in art, I didn't just focus on digital art. I also looked at art that was in other different forms, like nail art, makeup, all these different areas. And you learn about all these different types of tools, and what you're doing is that what we call in graphic design is that you're building your visual library.
If you look at it that way, I think it's a bit backwards. What you should be looking at is looking at how you can go into an environment where you're a stranger in a strange land. Mm-hmm. For example, going to Bunnings, a hardware place, right? One of the things that I was making up was Blood Bowl base rims, skill ring rims, where they've got names for stuff, right? And there's a stun and a prone. And in that, right, what I did was I used tile grout to wet that and put that into the name areas so that it came out as a bright white. And I had this guy talk to me and he's like, I would have never thought of that. And I'm like, this is not a stupid guy. This guy's, pretty on the ball. But it's about that lateral shift in thinking. There's always something in other areas that you can use.
Cool. So, that's something I wanted to talk to you about. Like being in Singapore, like I had a lot of different options to look for different items, like Japan Home, Daiso. Like these are very cheap places to look for like a wide variety of items. Like when we went to Mr. DIY, we saw so many different types of cotton buds. You have like teardrop shaped ones that are like shaped like a cattail, and you never even thought that they made,
Well, the reason that I bring this up is because in the hobby there are specific tools that usually come from Japan, and they're these cotton buds that won't fray. And the reason that that's important is if you're going to use oils, you want cotton buds that won't fray, because if they fray, they'll get onto your model and that's it. It's
you've got fuzz everywhere.
Yeah, it's a part of the model and you're going to have a real hard time getting it off.
So coming back to that point, right, is that how did you know that a Japanese, specifically a Japanese type of cotton bud would work better than a regular cotton bud? How did you come to discover that?
See, that's the thing. Like, once again, it was peripheral knowledge in the hobby. Like, I knew about these things because of, I do believe, not miniature hobbyists, but rather historical people who are trying to do replicas and that sort of thing. And they have these very specific tools. And I saw that there. But then when you started talking about different styles of cotton buds, my ears pricked up and I thought, maybe I can get those on the cheap, because for 10 of those, I think it's $5 or something. 20. 20. No. I'm talking about the specific ones, not the ones that we bought from Japan Home.
Oh, I don't remember the details, but I know like we got 200 of the earbuds, and they were, I think, less than $2. Like they were only
yes,
few
but
cents.
the specialty ones, the specialty hobby ones,
they're probably like very pricey, and it's not even that many.
Yeah, exactly.
And you go through those a lot, very quickly.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what I think I can conclude from this is that a lot of this information comes from talking to people of different backgrounds, and that's how we get the peripheral information, which allows us to go and explore these different areas. Because if we didn't know about it, we probably wouldn't have even thought to go in that direction.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I think it's also having the idea of being a hobbyist in different areas. Like, let's say that you're looking over something, have it with a hobbyist's mind's eye and take a look at it and you think, rather than going, oh, okay, this is all aquarium stuff, go, oh, that could be some gantries.
That could be used for, like, aquarium decorations. Maybe you could use it for basing.
Or, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So what you're basically trying to say is that use your hobbyist mindset. Go to an everyday place, like, for example, your Woolies, your petrol station, your wherever it may be.
Usually the cheaper areas.
Keep your eyes open and be like, keep an open mind and think, that might be something I could use, rather than thinking, I can only get this only from a hobby shop. Only this place.
And rather than thinking in that way, think about other things that might be close, because in my opinion, those makeup brushes are better, but they're not exactly the same. All right. Well, I've been Cal.
And I've been Sunny.
And keep those brushes wet.